You know when you're watching sports, you just see these incredible feats of athleticism, right? Breathtaking power, pinpoint precision. But have you ever really stopped and thought about what a skill actually is? Well, it turns out there's this hidden language, a secret structure to it all. And I promise, once you see it, you'll never watch sports the same way again.
Okay, so take a gymnastics routine. It's just a stunning example of a skill performed in a perfectly controlled environment. Every single move is planned out, choreographed, and rehearsed down to the tiniest detail. The world around that gymnast, it just doesn't change.
Now, let's flip that on its head. Look at a basketball layup, right in the middle of a game. It's the polar opposite. It's chaotic, it's reactive, it's totally unpredictable. That athlete has to adapt to defenders, teammates, the clock ticking down, all in a fraction of a second.
And then, for our final example, look at the intense focus going on here. A snooker shot. This is all about immense control and precision, but in a super quiet, stable setting. Really, the only variable is the one the player themselves creates.
So you've got gymnastics, basketball, and snooker. Three radically different actions that we just lump together and call skills. How do we even start to compare them? And more importantly, how on earth do coaches train for such different demands? Well, it turns out there is a hidden order to all this athletic chaos, and we're about to decode it.
The first key to decoding all of this starts with the environment. See, we can place pretty much every athletic action on a spectrum, and it's all based on one simple question. How predictable is the world around the athlete?
So on one end of the spectrum, we have what are called closed skills. You can think of these as happening inside a bubble. The environment is totally stable, totally predictable. And on the other end, you've got open skills, where the world is constantly shifting and changing, forcing the athlete to react and adapt on the fly.
And this illustrates that difference perfectly. I mean, look at the left, a volleyball spike. That is a classic open skill. The player has to react to where the ball is, where the blockers are, where the defenders are. But then on the right, you have an archer. The target isn't moving. The distance is fixed. That is a closed skill. It's a pure test of repeatable, perfect technique.
So just to recap, open skills, like a rugby tackle, are all about making decisions in a chaotic, changing world. Closed skills, like that archery shot, are about executing a pre-planned movement absolutely perfectly. But here's the crucial part. Most skills aren't purely one or the other. They exist somewhere in the middle of that spectrum.
Let's put this idea to the test. Think about a corner kick in soccer or football. The ball itself is stationary. That part is closed, right? But the players in the penalty box are moving, pushing, creating total chaos. That's very open. So where does it fall? It's a perfect example of a skill that sits right there in the middle of our continuum.
So we have the environment, but believe it or not, that's only half the story. The second lens we need to use is the complexity continuum. This isn't about the outside world. It's all about what's happening inside the athlete's head. Basically, how much brain power does the skill actually demand?
And on this spectrum, you've got basic skills at one end. Think about something like just running. For an elite athlete, it requires very little conscious thought. But on the other end, you have complex skills that demand intense concentration, super intricate movements, and rapid-fire decisions.
The key difference here is a little bit of jargon called perceptual load. Complex skills have a high load, and that just means the athlete is processing a ton of information, making multiple decisions, all while trying to perform a difficult movement. A basic skill has a low load. The movement is simple, and there's not a whole lot to think about.
Okay, let's try and put these two ideas together with a basketball free throw. So first, is it open or closed? Well, the hoop doesn't move, there are no defenders. It's definitely a closed skill. But is it simple or complex? For a beginner, it's incredibly complex. But for a pro who's shot 10,000 of them, it's become almost basic through all that practice. It just goes to show how a skill's complexity can change with experience.
So we've looked at the environment and we've looked at the mind. Our final way of classifying skills looks at the structure of the skill itself. Let's just forget the outside world for a second and ask, can this movement be broken down into smaller pieces?
This brings us to the idea of organization. So a low organization skill can be easily broken down into separate, clear phases. Think of it like following a recipe. A high organization skill is more like a single, flowing movement where each part depends completely on the one that came before it. It makes it almost impossible to practice in pieces.
Let's go back to that snooker shot. It is the perfect example of a high organization skill. The stance, the backswing, the strike, the follow-through, it's all one seamless action. You can't just practice the follow-through by itself. It wouldn't make any sense without the rest of the movement flowing into it.
So the rule of thumb is pretty much this. If you can break it down into step 1, step 2, step 3, it's probably low organization. If the entire thing is one fluid, inseparable motion, then you're looking at a high organization skill.
Okay, so we have these three powerful frameworks: environment, complexity, and structure. I know, this is fascinating theory, but here's the payoff. Why does any of this actually matter? Well, the real power comes when we apply it all to training.
This is where everything just clicks into place. If you're trying to master a closed skill, like that archery shot, the best way to do it is fixed practice. You repeat the exact same motion in the exact same conditions over and over and over again to burn that perfect technique into your muscle memory. But if you're training for an open skill, like that rugby tackle, you need variable practice. You have to practice in a ton of different situations to build up a whole mental library of responses. That way, you're ready for anything a real game throws at you.
And that right there is the ultimate takeaway. This whole framework isn't just some academic theory. By identifying where a skill sits on these three spectrums, anyone, a coach, an athlete, even you, can figure out the perfect way to practice. It's the difference between practicing hard and practicing smart. So, the next time you're watching a game, don't just see the action. Look for the hidden language behind it. Ask yourself, is that a closed, complex skill or an open, basic one? Because once you start classifying the skills, you'll gain a whole new appreciation for the absolute genius of the athletes on your screen.